Hey, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another Inspired live stream. It is Tuesday, January 30th, 2024. And my friends, we're healthy, we're wealthy, we're whole, we're free. Getting a little healthier, actually, by the day. It's wonderful to see you all in a live chat. Wanted to open this with these beautiful images from around the world. And that's just a small compilation, right? We saw Germany, we saw France, we saw Italy. I know it's happening in many, many places. The freedom movement. And this is really what it is. Don't fall for this narrative that this is just about some tax hikes and some specific regulations. There's much more going on. And today we wanted to bring on a guest that can help us in seeing the sort of the military perspective. He was in the military for a very long time, out in the battlefields, in the boardrooms, if you will, rubbing elbows with some of the wannabe elites, and in the trenches, rebuilding nations. A dear friend of ours. Please welcome with me retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt, phoning in today. General, good to see you or hear you.
Good to hear you and see you. It's always a pleasure for me and an honor to be on your show, and you know what a big fan I am. So thank you so much for taking the time to have me on.
Oh, likewise, General. It's always an honor to have you on. You probably saw the images we just showed. Just quickly, before we go into some of the more domestic stuff, the border stuff and all of that, what do you feel as a human being when you see this?
Oh, you get goosebumps. I mean, don't you? The name of your channel is so apt. It's the Inspired channel. So let's start with some B-roll of inspiration. And this is the cool thing, John, is people across the world are we the people, and they are waking up and they understand the threats that they're facing to their liberty, and they've seen enough, and now they've said they can't arrest us all. So we're now going to rise up, and we're going to say, no, you can't impinge our food supply chains. No, you can't take our property. And that's what these things are all about. And it's now, I think, 7, 8 countries and spreading rapidly across Europe. And hey, guess what? There's 5,000 truckers on their way to the Texas border right now to show the same types of solidarity with sovereignty and our rights to have our nation and its borders respected.
General, let's start with the border as a subject. Give us your analysis, including your not worry, but your assessment of could this be or turn into a psyop, a trap? Many people have said that. What is your take on it?
Yeah, so at first blush, if you look at the retail version that you'll get on mainstream media, even the conservative channels, you'll get, well, this is Texas versus the feds, and it's this battle that everybody is hopeful to see, that the states aren't going to take it, where the federal government violates Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, which is the responsibility to protect the states from invasion. So it sounds so classic. And then you got 25 governors signing on alongside of Texas to say, yeah, we stand with Texas. They should be able to defend their border. Now let's go behind the scenes. So now we're talking about a town called Eagle Pass, Texas, and it's smack in the middle of Texas's border with Mexico. So you've got about 400 miles to the left and 400 miles to the right, just outside the city limits of Eagle Pass. That's completely wide open border. It's unprotected. So is Texas really defending its own border, or is Texas making a stand in Eagle Pass? It's in Eagle Pass, and then it makes you ask another question. Well, if that's the only place they're really defending their border, and the feds want an open border right now, as they've demonstrated through their actions, maybe not their words, why are they so interested in thwarting Texas over this scrap of dirt called Eagle Pass when Texas is wide open by and large? And I think it's pretty clear that they don't want states binding together to even come together and start to say things like the 10th Amendment might be reigning supreme over the Supremacy Clause because the federal government's in breach of the Constitution. But what you were intoning at the start of your question is, well, wait a minute. If we've got all these protesters on the way to the border, and we have got Texas guardsmen and militias guarding that part of the border, are we going to see, like we did on Jan 6, a bunch of embedded federal folks? That's alleged still to be proved. But are we going to see that? And are we going to see arrests made of people just standing alongside of Texas, not alongside of the federal government of the United States? I worry about that. But if you have enough people, and I think there's going to be quite a few that are on their way down there, I don't think they can throw them all into a penitentiary. So it is heartening that the awakening is happening. It is heartening that people, even after we see events like Jan 6, want to go stand up for their country, want to go stand up for what's going down on the border, because quite honestly, John, there is no bigger security threat to the United States than that wide open border and the 8+ million fighting age men that have already gone into the interior of our country, and what we may have to deal with as a nation as a result of that malfeasance. And so I worry about these things. But what's heartening is we the people are joining we the people all over the world and saying we've had enough. And I join them in that spirit, and it's absolutely uplifting to see.
When we look at the trucker convoy, the Take Our Border Back folks, our dear friend, both yours and ours, Doc Pete Chambers, was involved and is in contact with them. I don't think it's his assessment, as far as I can tell, that the initial movement itself is somehow already infiltrated, but they are very aware of the potential, and they have security and they have countermeasures for that. So I think the fine line we have to walk is to anticipate such things because of history that shows us that any legitimate protest is always try to be infiltrated. But at the same time, don't fear it and don't say, well, we're just going to sit at home because this might happen, right? And we're just not going to report on it. We're not going to do anything. I think the danger that we run is to also fall for this narrative that very well could be steered by government players that say, hey, we're going to put this out there. This is all a psyop, and basically quell it in its foundation. Is that what you also kind of see, that there's this side of things that people get too fearful about it?
Yeah, I agree with you. There is another thought that I have that is troubling to me. So first off, let me be very clear about my affiliation and allegiances. I have just as much venom for uniparty Republicans as I do for Democrats. So I don't wear the team colors for either side, which I think is very important. I think most Americans are that way, by the way. But the reason I set that up that way is because I am very, very concerned that since it's just Eagle Pass and not the entire border, and so quickly you saw 25 Republican governors signing on, is it possible that these men and women now understand that there's very little chance we have to escape a terrorist attack as a result of these open borders. And isn't it possible that if we do have these terror attacks, that these actions and signing on with Texas and this thing we see at Eagle Pass is a convenient alibi to say, oh, well, we tried and we did stuff? I'm actually very concerned about that, because well before this crisis at the Texas border and Eagle Pass manifested itself, me, Doc Chambers, yourself, Michael Yon, others that are just analyzing this daily from a strategic standpoint, we see the potential for these UN monies that are really just our taxpayer dollars funneling through the UN, getting into the hands of these illegals. Once they cut those funds off, well, they pretty much are going to be coming after us, unless somebody's paying for them, because there's no place for them to work. They are homeless. And we're just now today starting to see that the government is starting to evict them out of these hotels, evict them out of homeless shelters. That creates a danger for us, a clear and present danger. So how easy would it be to be a foreign nation with illegal terrorist cells here in the United States, or illegal units from the People's Liberation Army, to see that kind of distress and chaos and then take advantage of it and embed their own schemes? So is the stuff going on at Eagle Pass and is Abbott's actions and the governor's actions something that's politically very expedient for them to do when they understand that that type of calamity is coming our way? I'm very worried that that might be the case.
Is this all? I mean, there's one thing we turned the the calendar turned just 30 days ago. We're in the year 2024. It's an election year. All bets are off, especially after what we've seen over the last 4 to 8 years. So, there's this side of things too, that everybody that is doing something publicly and saying something publicly has the election front of mind and says, okay, how's this gonna flip or switch things around? So we have this theater going on too, but there's something else, General. We're looking at the border, at the southern border. We still have the northern border that nobody's talking about. A lot of attention is off of there. We know that there's been a lot of movement through Canada, but then we have all these other international conflicts that are brewing or are being ignited on purpose. And you might give us a better assessment. We have still Ukraine, we have Israel, we have the whole Middle East. Actually, we have Yemen, we have Iran. How much can we possibly handle at one time? And which of these conflicts are you worried about that we might overextend ourselves here?
Well, we're overextended. And let me add to your list. Senegal is falling apart as you and I are talking right now.
Taiwan, by the way.
Taiwan, China, Philippines and China. You've got the entire segment of the Sahel of Northern Africa, all the countries that run across there. So we have many wars all over the world, and our country and our national security team has been at the center of them, projecting American weakness. It starts in Kabul, quite frankly. It starts in cutting and running on all our allies and partners, much to the delight of the Chinese and the Russians. The Russians got after that, and that's where you got Ukraine, and we didn't try to deter them from that. It was very deterrable. So you have to look at all of these actions, and then here we are with forces in the Middle East that we have been screaming for 6 months. There's war in the Middle East. Our forces are unprotected, and they don't have the rules in place to protect themselves. So why are they there? And if you can't justify them, bring them home. You have a national security team led by the president who won't engage the Congress on any of these things, representatives of we the people. So they're not following that either. So the thing is, when do you start to look at this string of 100% failures, right up to the 3 soldiers losing their lives 2 days ago with this drone? When do you look at all these things and this endlessly projected weakness that just instigates more war, and say, maybe this is not incompetence at all, maybe this is malevolence? When do we start to have that conversation? Or when does such egregious negligence in the area of providing for the national security of the United States rise to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors? Who in Congress is going to ask that? Because Here's the thing about the national security team. 100% of them are still in their seats. Nobody has left. Mayorkas here on the end last year of the administration is just now getting articles of impeachment against him. We have a Secretary of Defense who couldn't be found at his post for 8 days. So
that's unheard of. That's unheard of.
Absolutely unheard of. And so now we're at this abyss with Iran. We probably have to strike back because we can't project any more weakness. But has anybody thought this through from a strategic perspective? Are we really going to get into a war with Iran? And if we do, are we just going to repeat what we did in Iraq, where we're really good on the first week and a half of kicking down the country's doors, breaking things, and then we don't know what to do with it, and we don't know how to get out of it, and we don't know how to leave it. We just leave the world more dangerous and us more broke. And can you think of anybody more pleased with the United States involved in a proxy war in Europe and a major war in the Middle East than the Chinese and the Russians? They will be benefiting wildly about this. So I know we're going to be striking back here soon. I hope that cooler heads prevail, because if we do escalate this, you may see a regional war start to become a global war, and that all these little wars that you and I have been talking about all over the place start to click and connect. And that's exactly what happened in World War II. It didn't start out as World War II. It started out as, about 15 to 20 wars all over the world, and they all came together. So the worst fear that I have of all of that is if we are going to get into that type of war, are we strong enough right now for that? And do we have the right team to go ahead and be victorious in a war like that? I think you can go look at the recruiting numbers and the retention numbers of the U.S. military to get your answer.
That and, a staggering decline in health, a staggering rise in obesity and other sicknesses that cause, that don't inspire confidence in the generation that would have to fight that war, by the way. But General, you're really good at analyzing strategically situations. That's what you've done over your career. And so that's one thing, going into the details like you just did. But then there's the 30,000 foot view.
Sure.
And you're a pilot, so you know something about that. So you go in that, and you and I both know that this agenda was in place and has been for a very long time to bring all of us into conflict with each other, nations against nations, religions against religions. This is not a happenstance. So is there a way, in your view, as a military man, as a father, as a husband, as a spiritual man, to avoid this big conflict? And what could be the alternative for this?
Yeah, I think about this every single day, John. And I think about this from two motivations. Motivation number one is our children and our grandchildren deserve better than this. They deserve a world that we can leave them that's free of war and free of debt to the extent that we could make it, but certainly not one where they would lose their country and the republic that is their birthright. And I know many Europeans feel the same way. The second one is I don't want to be a member of the generation that fails our founders of this incredible constitutional republic that we were given. I don't want to be a member of the generation that does that. So from the 30,000 foot view, is there hope out there that this machine that President Eisenhower warned us about in his farewell address, you can go back to Washington's farewell address and said, avoid foreign entanglements. Well, there's money in those things. Foreign entanglements produce bottom lines, and so does War Incorporated, unfortunately. So if there's a place where hope exists as I look down from a higher view, it's what you started this podcast with. It's the people. No one's coming. It's we, the people. So getting out with those tractors, insisting that things change, making things change. We need to all, as Americans, look, if you can do nothing else, light up your phone and light up your elected officials' switchboards all day long, every day long. I make sure that the Idaho congressional delegation hears from me on Twitter just about every single day, because of their quietly looking away, doing nothing. They might say the occasional, "Oh, this border thing is really tough," Mr. Biden fix this. I mean, that's not that's not what we vote for them for. So I see it all across. People are waking up. Things that, people would have said that's a conspiracy theory just 2 years ago. Now everybody's like, okay, I get it. We're in trouble. What's up? Catherine Herridge, great, really one of the last great journalists who works at CBS News. She was asked on New Year's Day on a Sunday show. They said, well, do you fear that there's a black swan out there in front of us? And she said, yes, I absolutely fear there's a black swan in front of us very soon in 2024. And I would say, Catherine, I don't see a black swan. I see a flock of them. and you can pick which one it is. We don't have to identify the black swan that's going to roll in on us, or the few that are, like financial collapse, pandemic 2, war, civil war, global war. You take your pick of the poison. But what I do think is communities need to come together at the local levels. They need to get in touch with their faith leaders. They need to bind themselves together, and they need to explore ways that in the storms that we will see in this election year, and they're baked into the cake, that we harden ourselves, we make ourselves resilient, and that we do it with good humor, joy, resilience, love. And that's the power and the strength, especially here in America with our own communities. From Restore Liberty, what we have is a program we call the County Guardian Program. I'm actually leading an effort here locally in Northern Idaho, but to basically bring our leaders together in different subject matter areas, logistics, security, medical, whatever. And how do we plan for a very uncertain future for our county if our local governments are overwhelmed temporarily? And those are the things that really kind of pull people together. That's where the hope engine is. And then, we're going to go into this thing and we're going to face down 2024. But I do think that we're going to come out of this thing much better than when we went in.
I do think so too. I also know that in our community and in the groups that, we're part of, there is, despite everything, a very, very positive, inspiring sentiment. And I think at this point that can't even be extinguished anymore. That's just how we all feel. However, it doesn't take away from these daily tasks and these important things that you just mentioned, and also to understand that as much as we're connected, the freedom movement in France and in Italy and in Germany, it's important to keep it decentralized because of infiltration, because of all these things.
Sure.
And say, hey, what does my community need? It might be different from what your community needs in Idaho, just, geographically and weather-wise speaking. But what does my community need? What does my family need? How can we come together and help each other? There's one more subject that I wanted to touch on with regards to not just the border, but in the general sentiment. You are a military man. You know how to gauge the temperature there. A lot of people were worried about the rhetoric around the border situation, where the military was going to be sent in potentially then to federalize the National Guard. Do you see that if there is this conflict that might be brewing, do you see that the military would go actually this route, that they would actually go potentially against the people? Do you see that?
I don't. I am very worried that this could actually create cracks and fissures in our federal forces that will take a very long time to overcome. I've been watching kind of social media feeds of actual active duty soldiers who don't mind talking out and speaking out that if I'm asked to go deploy against Texas, I'm not going. Or I'll go join the Texas lines. And I was stunned by those conversations, John, because I was basically thinking, if they had Twitter in 1859, would I have been seeing the same types of things going across Twitter? And it's now, when things are calm and bullets aren't flying and the constitutional crisis has not completely erupted, that these conversations like you and I are having are so incredibly important, because these are the days where we still have opportunities to step back from the abyss. These are the days where we still have an opportunity to peacefully, and I'm stressing the words peacefully, resolve these issues. But let's get to the 3 soldiers who lost their lives 2 days ago. I think that the spokesperson for the White House, Karine Jean-Pierre, actually said the quiet part out loud yesterday. She said that they died serving the Biden administration. And at first I was like, how big a misspeak is that? They swore an oath to the Constitution. They're not bound to any administration. And then I sat back and went, wait a minute. Maybe she actually identified the hardcore truth. Maybe it's their perception that all of the agencies of the federal government, what we lovingly refer to now as the deep state, are first and foremost to be loyal and brought to heel to the administration. And maybe that's the source of the issue. And maybe we should encourage all federal workers to remind themselves that they swore an oath to the Constitution. And swearing an oath to the Constitution doesn't give you the right to take an illegal order to break the law and break the law on behalf of your boss. And quite frankly, I'm going to be a little bit more harsh with this. If you're a CBP person and you let that person go into our country knowing that they shouldn't, and that's a violation of our laws, your answer of, I have a mortgage and a kid, doesn't get it. And if you're a senior leader in that organization, your answer of, well, I'm only 2 years to retirement, well, that's not going to draw a lot of sympathy here when we're fighting these people off in our own towns if there's some terror events. So these are difficult times. The military should remind itself that it has a constitutional oath. And I hope that they'll remind the president that the serious implications of turning an American force on an American force would be devastating to this country, result in possibly the loss of a state, maybe some balkanization, and potentially far worse. And I don't like to be hyperbolic with anything that I say, so I'm very, very loath and reticent to say, well, civil war, here we come. I would just say that you're sitting in a kerosene storage facility with lit matches and playing with them is not going to get us to a better place.
Well, that that was poetically put, General. I second that. And I want to say that the only entity that can prevent war, civil war, or any other armed conflict is we the people. There's nobody else left who can do it. Because there's nobody who's motivated to do it. Right now, the best way out for the perpetrators of the last 100 years plus is war. That's the easiest way out. That's the easiest way to get things done for them at this point. And we're the only ones who can say we're not going to do it.
Have you noticed that they're the ones who tend not to fight in them, and they've never worn a uniform or even fired a weapon? I get so hung up with, we watched the political rhetoric of the day, and I just saw Lindsey Graham's tweet where it's bomb them all. And Senator Cornyn seems to be more concerned with the territorial integrity in the Middle East than he is of his own state. But these are folks who, I get it. Lindsey was a lawyer in Afghanistan for a few months, but these are folks who truly do not understand or have not contemplated the horrific circumstances that surround war on all sides. There is nothing glorious about war. There is nothing good about war. And go ahead and tell me, in the last 35 years, what victory militarily has the United States achieved? Tell me about any of our wars where, well, that was, we certainly had our way with that one and it benefited everybody. I don't think you'll be able to do it. And so here we are, with the lessons of shock and awe and Iraq and how we left Iraq. And now they're calling for the same exact thing in Tehran. And what we have to be cognizant of is this time it's different. This time Iranian forces and proxies are right here living amongst us. So don't think for 5 seconds that we're immune to this war because we're going to be calling it an overseas war if that's what comes.
Our message has been to all wives, to all husbands, to all fathers and mothers and grandfathers and grandmothers to have these conversations with their active duty military members and really talk about it. There is a time to say no, I think, and this is a good time to say no. We're not going to do it. I mean, a global scale conflict, or even a smaller scale within this nation. I just think there is a time where even soldiers have to say that this is not the way to go. That's my personal opinion. But General, before we log off here, I want to thank you for your service while you were active, and for your service after your active military career. You're out there fighting the good fight every single day. What is your message for today for the people watching, and where can people find you and keep up with everything you do?
Well, thank you for that. And again, I love our discussions, John, and that we get to have them with all these wonderful people watching is really great too. My message is pretty clear. I would love for everybody to keep their hope, keep their optimism. You know, cling to your faith, cling to your communities, and hold your elected accountable, no matter what. Take that time to do that, because the more voices that they feel pressure on, the better we all do. So play a role, take a part, grab something in your community, and do something locally, and then keep yourself smart on what's going on. They shouldn't be doing a lot of these things in our name. And I love that this nation is waking up and saying, yeah, that is correct. You're not going to do these things in our name.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, General. Let us know, where can people find you? Where can they find your organization? Where can they find the Irascible Disruptor? That's your
So
your writer name.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So you can always find my blog at newsmax.com. If you go to the Insiders tab, you can find the Irascible Disruptor, or just search my name. And I put a piece out usually once a week. And then at restore-liberty.org, it's a brilliant organization. We're 2 years old or 3 years old now. And, you know, we really support the Constitution. It's not a political organization. It's more about making sure that our liberties are upheld, and that our constitutional sheriffs are supported, and that we are resilient for any storm.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, General. Inspire Tribe, we put all the links in the video description so you can find a General's work. Thank you again, General Holt. It's wonderful to talk to you. Always great to get the spiritual military analysis. I love that.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Inspire Tribe, thank you so much for tuning in. You know we love you. We appreciate you. We'll be back with you again very, very soon.